As markets crash and burn quite literally while I make this video, which should resonate with everybody that watched yesterday's video about what needed to happen that obviously didn't, I stumble across a brand new version of a document that I've mentioned many times throughout 2025 with some of the biggest financial powerhouses on the planet now observing the risk mitigation framework out of the Global Blockchain Business Council. I'm going to hop right in, and I guess I'll start with markets. We also have Hedera and McLaren. We also have institutional DeFi on XRPL, scaling real-world finance with XRP at the core. We also have an interview I have coming up with the CEO of R3 for Internet Capital Markets. And for those not aware, R3 is essentially chose Solana mid to tail end of last year for all of their kind of integration needs. And Corda, I believe, Corda Settler is going to start bridging across public networks on Solana at some point this year. I want to start here because obviously everybody's watching this. I talked about what needed to happen as far as where we needed to hold as far as Bitcoin was concerned. Obviously, that didn't happen. Bitcoin's sitting right now $63,436. But I don't want to spend too much time on this because doom and gloom is not what we do on this channel, and everything is looked at as an opportunity. I want to zoom out on the monthly chart and basically paint a picture. Obviously, you're not going to catch a bottom. But what I do want to say is you can kind of get somewhere close. And by that, I mean, you just have to look for historical things that have happened that are very similar. And essentially, you can see these very, very long tails at the bottom of the bodies of the candles anytime we've had a market reversal post-bottoming. So you can see back here, this happened November of 2022. This happened March of 2020. This happened, I think, in June or July of November. Yeah, June of 2022 as well. Obviously, we dipped a little bit lower, but still an incredible opportunity. And you go all the way back to 2015, this happens, go to 2018, this happened, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't even pay for a trading view accounts, and you can just look for very simple things. Interestingly enough, the top actually did happen with what I had drawn up for like 4 years. And I'm not even a TA guy, but in the halving and the 4-year cycles, I still believe are a thing. I know everybody's saying they're not, but this, at least the top, says differently. Now, interestingly enough, if you can do a study out towards the bottom and see what happens as well, it's not just time-based, though. You have to really figure out all the global stuff going on and do some percent drawdowns and everything else that happens there. Anyways, this is the meat and potatoes of this video. This is a 2025 document, the Global Blockchain Business Council, the proposed risk mitigation framework for non-financial risks of blockchain infrastructure on public networks. Public permissionless, public permissioned, all of that jazz tied together. You have the biggest entities in blockchain contributing to this: Avalanche, Cardano, Clearstream, DTCC, so traditional entity, Euroclear, GBBC, which is this document's entity, Hedera Foundation, Oliver Wyman, Ripple, the World Bank observing, and in phase 2, Canton Foundation, who I just interviewed, and Chainlink. Now, what I found today is the 2026 version of this document. You can see here, this was just updated in January of 2026. I wonder what they're up to this year. Now, an interesting sidebar here, the Hedera Council just announced their strategic partners and strategic community partners for the council. I will give a soft Genfinity plug. We are a strategic community partner, but the only strategic, or the first, I should say, strategic partner through the business lens and the institutional lens is the Global Blockchain Business Council. They sit directly alongside the Hedera Council now. They are not on the council, but they sit alongside as a strategic partner. Now, this 2026 version adds some interesting entities for core contributors, and I'm more interested in the traditional entities, adds a bunch of interesting entities as observers. As I showed previously, the World Bank was the only observer. Now, in 2026, Now, I recommend you guys look into how big some, especially from the banking entity and clearing and settlement, some of these entities are. Asian Development Bank being one of those. ADB, absolutely massive. I remember deep diving ADB back in 2020, 2021. Asian Development Bank is observing. Enterprise Ethereum Alliance is observing. Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation. Inter-American Development Bank is observing. International Security Services Association. Moody's Ratings is observing. SWIFT is observing. The World Bank is still here. They are the only one that was carried over from 2025. Nobody else was even observing. Now you have all these. United Nations Joint Staff Pension Fund and the Wyoming Stable Token Commission. So the first stable coin, essentially from a state in the United States. Core contributor changes as well. Canton Network used to be in phase 2. Now they are directly mentioned as a core contributor. Avalanche stayed, Cardano stayed, Chainlink was in phase 2 and now is a core contributor. Clearstream, I believe, it stayed. Deutsche Börse is new. Digital Asset is the parent company of Canton. DTCC stayed, Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. It clears global derivatives, quadrillions. Euroclear stayed. Hedera Foundation stayed. Connexus by JP Morgan is new. And Ripple stayed. So talk about wanting to be a fly on the wall at some of these meetings here. Sidebar, I'm not going to put my tinfoil hat on here, but I always see things that remind me of Bearable Guy from the XRP community, and this reminded me. This is the framework. This is the use of the bow tie model, and we know Bearable Guy always wears a bow tie. So I did think of this, and I actually started going down a rabbit hole that I had to get myself out of pretty quickly. But I thought it was cool. I mean, I'm who's not a fan of Bearable Guy? And yeah, I mean, okay, so roadmap changes. Phase 2 is the first half of 2026. This is Workstream A. Extend analysis of this framework to layer 2s. Define an updated taxonomy and operational risks and incorporate feedback on initial framework. Workstream B is on-chain digital payments, stablecoins, and tokenized deposits. I've been talking about that on this channel, tokenized deposits, for literally probably a year and a half, and just seeing it kind of across the mainstream the past handful of months. Further analysis and operational resilience and payment rails. Phase 3, 2026, extending to native crypto assets. So that is coming this year as well. Updating framework from phases 1 and 2. Benchmarking the risk mitigation framework to real world use cases as well. You can find this document. This is a publicly accessible document. This is cool. Arrow McLaren IndyCar team in the limelight. I don't know if you can hear audio on this. I hope it's not too loud if you can, but I'll play this real quick. And interesting Hedera branding location. It's 30 seconds, so we'll watch it. So if you missed it, Hedera pretty much right in a really cool spot. But honestly, this is this is pretty cool in general. I think a lot of the times we wonder with some of these relationships, what's going to happen. Is there going to be actual presence? Are there things, I guess, more importantly, that are going to lead towards actual real world use cases? And so on and so forth. But I thought this was a really cool announcement. This came out last night. We have a speech from Chairman Atkins on the U.S.-European Capital Markets Cooperation. This brings me back to the transatlantic financial architecture that is very apparently happening. This is tokenization across America and the EU, but I won't bore you with Paul Atkins' stance. Basically, this is talking about SEC's Project Crypto and, coordinating across jurisdictions. SBI Holdings and Startail unveil layer 1 blockchain Stream. SBI Holdings, obviously, we know is an OG in multiple networks, specifically a big supporter of Ripple and XRP. But obviously they branched out, and it looks like they're unveiling their layer 1. SBI also has relationships with the XDC network. They support multiple digital assets. I know HBAR is supported. This is the big ticket of the day, RMF framework. This is the whole document, the 2025 annual report. Maybe we'll walk through that in a second here. ISO TC 307 is deeply kind of embedded into this document, if I remember correctly. So GBBC essentially became or was accepted into ISO TC 307 as a Category A liaison. This provides GBBC support to technical standards work at the nation state level and allowing Global Blockchain Business Council, this is this whole risk mitigation framework we just talked about, to engage and work closely with the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, which obviously rings a bell to, I'm sure, everybody. Now, interesting fact about ISO TC 307, this was founded or spearheaded, I should say, by Gilbert Verdian, the founder of Quant Network. And while Quant Network is not in the Global Blockchain Business Council, it is interesting to me to see the ripple effects of some of Gilbert's work across all of these different initiatives. This is a big document here. It talks about by the numbers. Let me see let's try to maybe scroll through this real quick together. Nonprofits, government entities and offices, financial services, blockchain infrastructure, law firms, environmental services and commodities. This is huge. I mean, they are growing and growing and growing. And as we know, like they're literally sitting on the, they are sitting as a strategic partner of the Hedera Council now. I think it's within this document as well. Work streams, programs, working groups, and you kind of get the picture. These guys are basically at the front line of essentially advocating for the adoption of blockchain and distributed ledger, and working towards compliance and working towards bringing these markets onto public networks. So, I mean, that's kind of the whole purpose of the risk mitigation framework, but you can see all of the initiatives. There's a lot to get through here. So I recommend you guys go and find this. It's a huge document. Hedera Council welcomes GBBC as first strategic partner. We mentioned that. Institutional DeFi on XRPL. Scaling real-world finance with XRP at the core. Now, I also want to note here, the XRP tipbot for you OGs in XRP community, that is live again or going live again very soon. Vitsa Vind just put out a post, XRPL Labs. This is not, I'm not making this up. This is actually coming to fruition again. Maybe we start there and give a huge shout out to Vitsa. And you see right here, this is just a few hours ago. Well, if you want proof that things on X or Twitter are changing, here's the proof. Let's bring back the good old vibes. The XRP tipbot account. Hello, XRP community. TAC XRP army. Great news. XRP tipbot is coming back. This time with XRP ZA or Zahao, which we know is the network that Vitsa and a lot of the XRPL. Oh gosh, I'm too much information flowing through my head at once. A lot of the Sum and Salmon team, XRPL Labs, certainly working on Zahao as well. And every issued token on XRPL and Zahao. That is freaking crazy. I think that's the biggest part of this announcement here is essentially, if this comes to fruition, being able to tip people in any issued token on XRPL or Zahao. That is a huge, huge thing for adoption, because then essentially you're leveraging the best of these networks directly on an application that you're already using, like X or Twitter. You don't have to go and do other things. I remember how easy it was to onboard into something like XRP Tipbot back in the day. Fully self-custodial using Zahao and Evernode. This is even better. I remember back in the day, and this ran through Uphold, which there's nothing wrong with that. But at the end of the day, you want the tips. If you're receiving tips, you want that to be able to not necessarily be through an exchange, but be through a self-custodial wallet. I'm just a huge advocate of self-custodianship of your assets in the space. XRP Tipbot is coming back. Pretty sure those are the only posts, though, but that is freaking awesome. And then, before I maybe move over to that, I'm interviewing Richard Brown. Now, I've been working on this interview for, let's say, a month and a half at this point, obviously to get into the scheduling docket of individuals like this, it takes a little bit of time. But he is the chief executive officer at R3 Labs. Now, if you're not aware, R3 spun up R3 Labs for Internet Capital Markets. I think it was in September of last year, right whenever his tenure started there. Prior to that, he was the chief technology and product officer at R3. Prior to that, founding CTO and advisor to the CEO and CTO kind of in general. So this guy knows from September 2015 to August 2024, he was a CTO at R3. So you can imagine some of the things that he knows. I mean, we go all the way back to Corda Sedler speculating on XRP back in the day. We know that there's bridging aspects that tie into, I don't think partnership, but bridging aspects tying into XDC network. Corda Sedler and R3 Corda, I mean, you're pretty much on par with, you had R3 and you had Corda Sedler. You had digital asset and DAML and like the language and all that stuff, which was essentially now is Canton. You had Hyperledger, and that was pretty much it. I mean, back in 2020, 2021, I mean, you're talking about like more private permission environments, and it was pretty much R3, Hyperledger, and digital asset. Maybe I'm missing one, but that was pretty much it. Now, R3 Labs spun up in September, so I'm looking forward to doing this interview. This is next Thursday. If you guys have questions that you'd like me to potentially ask to the CEO of R3 Labs, I'm happy to do that. These guys did announce they are doing this on Solana. This was announced back in September as well. So I'm excited for this interview, though. I think it's going to be really cool. R3 Corda, I believe, is going to have some public bridging aspects onto Solana as well, which may be the more interesting portion of an interview because Corda deals in like tens, I forget exactly how much. I think it's tens of billions in assets that have historically ran on top of private rails. I want to say 17 billion for a number. I could be wrong. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. But that stuff's going to start bridging on public. And as we've talked about on this channel so many times, you go to rwa.xyz, total RWAs right now that show up are like, what is it? It was like 24 billion when we looked yesterday. I would say it's higher than that, probably because they haven't aggregated everything. But then you would have essentially one entity, R3, bringing potentially 10, 15, 17 billion more directly on chain. And kudos to Solana on the integration. That's cool too. So that's going to be a good interview. I put that up there with, I mean, the Canton one was really good, I thought. If you guys didn't check that out, check it out. I mean, obviously, anytime you interview Dr. Lehman Baird from Hedera, it's awesome. Anytime that like David Schwartz, I've had an opportunity a couple of times to interview, which is absolutely amazing. But yeah, that would be probably top 10 interviews I've wanted to do would be R3 and finally getting to do it. So it's kind of a full circle moment to like sit here and like say the entities that we were deep diving on this channel in 2020 and 2021, we are now talking to and asking questions to. Go to @Genfinity Media if you want to see the full interviews there. They're all on there on YouTube and on X @Genfinity. Institutional DeFi on XRPL, scaling real world finance with XRP at the core. Now, kind of the breakdown here. This is coming out of Ripple X. So if you do not follow the Ripple X account on Twitter, I know a lot of people just follow the main Ripple accounts or, you know, some of the others or your favorite influencers. There are some really good accounts in XRPL land that you should be following. Maybe we'll go through that. Maybe I'll make a video just on that. But Ripple X is certainly one of them. So you're talking about kind of the dev arm of the XRP ledger. So that's Ripple X, and that's obviously through Ripple's stance, but there's tons of developers. So Ripple X, you have XRPL Commons. You have Zaodao, obviously. That's one of, I think, 4 funding entities. And then obviously Ripple, and I'm sure I'm probably missing 1 or 2. XRP's utility is growing. Now, this is kind of the ethos here for institutional DeFi on XRP Ledger, scaling real-world finance with XRP at the core. This just released February 5th, so literally today. Now these are the cliff notes. XRP's utility is growing across payments, liquidity, and credit markets. New institutional-grade features such as MPT, permission domains, lending protocols, confidential transfers, or scaling use cases for tokenized assets, foreign exchange, and on-chain credit. Live tools like credentials, that's another interview that was really good, was Anchal Malhotra from Ripple X and the dev arm, digital identity, on-chain credentialing, things like that. Live tools like credentials, token escrow, batch transactions, bringing enterprise-grade compliance and automation to on-chain workflows, and the foundation for the next generation of blockchain-based financial infrastructure being built with XRP as the backbone. So I think for most people here, they care about where XRP is going to potentially be used, exploring XRP utility across the ecosystem. You can see here, impact spanning direct, blah, blah, blah. The indirect impact we can also hone in on comes through how XRP is used in base layer operations like reserve requirements, transaction fees, and bridging currency and foreign exchange and lending flows. This is kind of one of the things that I allude to a little bit when we talk about tokenized RWAs. However, I would argue that like the burn mechanism is so, I don't even think it's an argument, is so low that unless, I think even if the numbers were astronomical, it may not move the needle. That being said, I do think there's a 1,000% a carryover effect from, on-chain markets into something like XRP, just like there is going to be across any network that brings in real volumes and real integrations with real-world assets and things like that. Payments and foreign exchange, collateral liquidity, credit and financing, et cetera, et cetera. The expanding XRP economy building with purpose. Talks about use cases and features from stablecoin payments, FX, and remittance to tokenized collateral, lending and credit and compliance, what's live and what's coming. So live right now is MPT, which is a flexible token standard allowing the carrying of essential metadata, credentialing, permission domains, simulations, deep freezes, and the XRPL Ethereum virtual machine sidechain. Coming soon, permission to DEX is in Q2. Lending protocol, so XLS 65 and 66. Confidential transfers, smart escrows, MPT DEX integration, so seamless cross-token transactions across XRP and IOU tokens, and institutional DeFi portal in Q1, which we only have like a month and a half left, so I'm excited to see when this stuff releases. So yeah, definitely go to ripple.com/insights and learn more about Ripple's vision for institutional DeFi on the XRP ledger with XRP at the core. So from Bitcoin crashing all around us to Arrow, McLaren, Indy, and Hedera, to Ripple's vision for institutional DeFi, to I'm really looking forward to this interview with the CEO of R3 Labs and Internet Capital Markets. The big document here today, obviously, and we didn't even get through this 30-page behemoth document, but this is kind of just a more kind of broad one. I think this tells about everything that Global Blockchain Business Council is doing. One document that I've really harped on all throughout 2025 was when we found this risk mitigation framework. This is literally the document that I saw Canton Network on for the first time and sparked me actually looking into what they were doing. And then I didn't realize until like a few months later that they were essentially, spun up from Digital Asset Holdings, and then reached out for an interview and was like, hey, I've been talking about you guys for a while. I'd love to do an interview. So this was that document. These are the types of things that you can normally look for and find interesting tie-ins. Obviously, huge networks involved already. Again, to recap, Avalanche, Canton, Cardano, Chainlink, Clearstream. Chainlink's on a network, as we know, but Chainlink has so much integration with CCIP and Chainlink runtime environment. The data standard is pretty much used across every network that there is. Swift, Clearstream, Deutsche, Digital Asset, DTCC, Euroclear, Hedera Foundation, Connexus by JP Morgan, which also I think interacts with Chainlink and also I think interacts with Canton Network. Actually, I know it does. Ripple, Asian Development Bank, Enterprise Ethereum Alliance, Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation, Inter-American Development Bank, International Securities Services Association, Moody's Ratings, Swift, the World Bank, United Nations Joint Staff Pension Fund, and the Wyoming Stable Token Commission. So if it's good enough for them to observe what is going on, I think it's worth paying attention to here, and these phases will be interesting to watch. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will talk to you when I talk to you. Thanks. Bye.